Lose lawsuits without even fighting. Um, Before we start, I want to say this is not legal advice. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. Laws are different in every state and every situation is different. So always do your own research or speak with an attorney if needed. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about default judgments, which is how most people actually lose lawsuits without even fighting the case. You'd be surprised how many people go to court and because they don't know their rights or they don't know what to say or they're just simply intimidated, they lose just based off of a default judgment. Um, so a lot of people think when they lose a lawsuit, it's because the other side had a stronger case. But in reality, most people lose lawsuits because they never responded in the first place. They ignore the papers, they don't understand the deadline, and then a few weeks later, they have a judgment against them and don't even know how it happened. And sometimes it's not even within weeks. It's within a year, or they said something to me, you know, about a couple months ago, and I didn't hear anything back. And now a year later, I go to, sell an asset, and my uh, uh, there's a lien on my property, or I went to see my bank account, and my wages are being garnished. So, you know, we're going to talk about why these things happen in this video and kind of how to prevent that. So, what a default judgment is. A default judgment is when the court gives the plaintiff a judgment automatically because the defendant did not respond to the lawsuit or did not show up. So, the court is not saying the plaintiff is right after a trial. The court is basically saying you didn't respond, so the other side wins by default. This is why responding to a lawsuit is extremely important, even if you think you owe the debt, even if you don't have money, and even if you don't know what to do yet. Responding keeps you in the game at least, right? Ignoring it automatically takes you out of the game, and it's going to be their side or nothing. So if you know you've been done wrong, even if you don't know how to articulate yourself, that is your chance to take the intimidation away, because depending on how much it is, people are dealing with 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, six-figure lawsuits that they don't know how to respond to, and they just let it be. And it's like that's the worst thing that you can do, because regardless of anything, you're not even there to plead your case or even say what the other party did to you wrong. All right? How fast it happens. Okay, so this can happen faster than people think. Usually, you get served, and you may only have between 14 and 30 days to respond, depending on your state. If you do not file an answer by the deadline, the plaintiff can file something called a motion for default or request for default judgment. And once the court approves it, they now have a judgment against you. So, in a lot of cases, someone can go from getting served to having a judgment in as little as a month or two if they don't respond. Okay? Consequences of a default judgment. This is where it becomes like very real for people. Once someone gets a judgment against you, they may be able to start collecting through legal enforcement methods such as wage garnishment, bank account levies, property liens, seizing certain assets depending on the state, interest being added to the judgment. So a lot of people ignore a lawsuit thinking nothing will happen, and then months later, their paychecks is smaller or their bank account is frozen and they don't understand why, right? Um, and let's go even farther with, um, you know, it may take a few months, right? This can happen very quickly, or it can take a few months because again, they're trying to figure out what assets you have. Once you get a judgment, it's up to the party, it's up to the plaintiff to say, or the person who won to then come after you. The judge doesn't the court doesn't automatically just take it out your bank account or say you have to give up your car or your house. That is up for the plaintiff. They have to do their due diligence and put in certain things. If they want to garnish your wages, if they want to take a certain asset, that's up for them on how they want to get their money back. Okay, so it can be as soon as a month or two, and it can be, you know, up to a certain amount of time, depending on your state. How to prevent a default judgment. The way to prevent a default judgment is actually very simple, but most people don't do it. You must respond to the lawsuit before the deadline. If your response is simple, even if you are still trying to figure things out, filing an answer prevents default judgment in most cases because now the case is contested and the plaintiff has to actually prove their case, right? Whereas if they're alone in the courtroom, it's no they don't need to fight against anything. This is what we have. The judge just takes it as right because he doesn't have anything to compare it to, right? So the most important thing you can do when you get served is not panic, not ignore it, and not wait until the last minute. You need to find out your deadline and file a response before that deadline as soon as possible. All right. So in most court, okay, going back to this, right? In most courts, once you respond to a lawsuit, the case moves into the litigation process, which can include things like discovery, motions, possible settlement, or trial. But if you never respond, the case never gets to that stage because the plaintiff wins automatically through that default. So, responding to a lawsuit is not about winning immediately. It's about protecting yourself and forcing the other side to actually prove their case instead of just going into the courtroom like, hey, this is what it is, and you're not even there to defend yourself. All right. If you want to learn how to respond to lawsuits, how to build defenses, how to identify weaknesses in the plaintiff's case, and how the process actually works, I break this down step by step inside my mentorship and community. And if you are currently being sued right now and need help with your specific case, I do offer a service where I provide attorney style guidance to help you respond correctly, point out your strongest defenses, identify weaknesses in the plaintiff's case, review their evidence, and help you understand your options and strategy so you don't end up with a default judgment or losing your case. All right, the biggest mistake people make is not fighting back at all. Most people don't lose because they had no defense. Most people lose because they never responded. So if you get served, remember this. Getting served does not mean you lost. Ignoring it does not make you lose. Is what makes you lose. I'm sorry. If this video helped you, make sure you subscribe because I'm going to be making more videos about lawsuits, debt collectors, credit reporting, and how to protect yourself financially and legally. So I will see you guys in the next video.